Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm really so happy with being back in London, which is great. One of my favorite cities, and I'm here with Sharon. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks
Really
for inviting
appreciate for
me.
taking the
Yes,
time.
thank you.
So, we have a podcast. We're gonna talk about technology again, but we're also gonna talk about you and me and where we come in terms of technology and IT. But
Yeah,
let's start with you, Sharon. So,
sure.
tell me a little bit of how you came into IT and who you are.
Oh, as most IT professionals at my age, I got into IT by accident. It was never planned.
No.
So going right back to my childhood heritage, both my parents are from Barbados. I'm the middle child of seven. My parents met and married in the UK and raised us with philosophies around learning. So I grew up around the dining table, having to every evening come up with something that I'd learnt new that
Oh,
day that I
really?
hadn't known
That's super
before.
nice.
Yeah, it was a great game for my dad to introduce for us as kids to keep us entertained, but it actually helped us build this capability around learning
Curiosity.
and curiosity. Really, really curious. So roll forward a few years. Being one of seven, money was very tight. We grew up in inner city London, so it was always expected we'd go out to work. So university wasn't an option. Went straight into work, and it was whilst I was working that I discovered my curiosity around technology, which was just being introduced. I mean, I'm going back over 30 years now, but it was just being introduced into the workplace. And I discovered that I had an aptitude for fixing things. When a problem arose, I was really curious about, well, surely there must be an easier way of getting this done. It can't just be broken. Like printing was a big issue back then.
Yes,
And
always.
yeah, always with printing. So I was at a bank that I was working at,
Shaking the toners to get them to work.
shaking the tone. It was the connectivity. It was always a connectivity issue. Never ever worked. And whilst I was there, saw that there was a problem with this printing issue, that it was always the same issue. Went out, bought a book, found out how to solve it, solved it. And my bosses at the time said, well, you're wasted in admin. Why don't you find a career in IT? And
Wow.
that's how my career started.
Yeah.
So it was, as I say, completely by accident, but it all started with this philosophy of curiosity.
Yeah, back to the dinner table with your family.
Exactly, around the table.
Really nice.
Yeah.
So, but I think I mean, everything around kids and education, the new generation coming up. I was in a venue in London yesterday, and we actually talked about it. Is that kind of like the approach to technology and to IT is so different today? I mean, you have it in front of you all the time, whether it's a mobile phone or tablet or the computer. You're always near to kind of asking questions to the internet or.
Yeah, and I think, I'm naturally a historian. So I was explaining about the fact that I left school, went straight to work, but I actually did education further on in my career because I felt it was important.
Yeah, did quite a lot, actually.
I did quite a lot. Again, completely by accident, but once I got the bug, I just started learning computer science, a law degree, and then an MBA, and then Master of Law.
4.
Yes, 4. But the Master of Law was my pivotal point because it actually taught me, I mastered in forensic psychology, and it taught me about humans and why people do what they do and why people, behave in the way that they behave.
So they all connect, kind of.
Yeah, it did all start to connect. And when you start thinking about the history of humanity and where we all started as humans, and then walk through the centuries, education has been the same, centuries old. The pupils sit in a classroom with a tutor at the front of the classroom telling them how to think, how to behave, what to do.
But hasn't that changed? Because, I mean, so I can pivot back to what you say about you kind of look at things, then you take them apart out of curiosity, then you figure out how it works, then you read a book, and then you kind of become the subject matter expert 30 years ago. But today it's easy access to everything. And by the way, I think that learning is significantly changing now. Again, because you have so many options.
Yes.
Every media is open.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you have so many options. And if I go back to how I started in IT, when I had to go out, I was curious. I went out, found a book, trial and error to try and solve the problem. Today, I would have just gone to ChatGPT and said, this is the problem I have. How do I solve it? And it would have told me, no thinking. So yes, it's changing. And this is what really, I guess, for us as humans need to think through as we go into the next wave of our evolution with the onset of agentic AI and the way technology is moving. People's perception of what they add as value is changing. So back then it was knowledge. Well, that's no longer an asset. So what does that then mean for people who want to develop going forward? What sorts of jobs will they get into? And these are the things that really, if you ask me what keeps me awake at night, it's that conundrum, what is the purpose of humanity moving forward with all this new technology?
but isn't that the definition of innovation?
It is the definition of innovation, but it's if you look at innovation, as I say again, over time, the first big innovation for humans was the introduction of fire. It then took 2 million years before humans discovered to use fire for cooking and heat. And all these sorts of things. So, and then you roll forward to technology today, with man landing on the moon 66 years from the time of the first flight, to the onset of the mobile phone and how long it then took for it to become, widely used. ChatGPT, that was launched, and within a couple of months, 100 million users. So it's the rate of change is really increasing. We really have to rethink what our purpose is as humans now, especially in the workplace.
So I've actually had this in almost every podcast that we've been doing,
Right.
talking about that the adoption of new technology is going faster and faster. So what took 10 years ago, now is 1/3 of that time, or maybe even less, to your point about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And that means that people has to adapt quicker to technology. But I mean, so just an example, right? I mean, like if you take the tube, right, and you see an 85-year-old lady taking out her iPhone and kind of like browsing like a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's IT or it's becoming easier.
Yeah.
It's more adaptable. It's
Yeah.
easier to go, ChatGPT, but obvious, but you take a mobile phone, you take any other device that we have in our hands every day. It's easier because you're thinking a lot about the experience to the product, right? So when we do product innovation, that's kind of like the number one focus is to look at how do you actually get on with it.
Yeah. Well, the differentiator, as far as I can ascertain, is all about the human experience. It's not about the technology per se. So to be human for me is the emotion, the feeling, the connection. Those are the things that are really important. And then when you add technology onto it, our lives were supposed to be being made easier with social media, but people are feeling more disconnected, more lonely. So I do think that as we go into the next wave of our evolution, it's going to be focused on connection with people. And the best businesses moving forward and is not going to be just the technology business. It's going to be those businesses that improve the quality of lives of people and the connections that people have.
And that's actually where, so that's a very good example of where, so the way that I'm discussing it with my team is that we're not worried about the compute power that we have, because there's plenty right now. So we have a massive overhead. So we're pushing it to next discussion, which is how do we do exactly what you said?
Yeah.
I don't know about connecting the people thing, because that's very difficult still, right? But we should use technology to do that.
Technology will certainly make it easier. You know, I was this week at a meeting of my peers who we were discussing the economic involvement of technology and what it's going to do globally. So what's happening in Asia, what's happening in the US, Europe, UAE. And one of the elements that we've started moving down was the fact that technology is making things easier, but the reality is, what will people then do? Because jobs are going to start to disappear, as they did when machines went into the factories. People had to change what they did.
Personal computer came.
You know, things have evolved, and that's just natural for humans. But we have to really reimagine what it is to be human. And that's the key. So it isn't for me just about the fact that we have to learn how to use the technology. That's going to happen from the time we started introducing fire. You know, humans have started learning how to use new things.
Adapted.
And adapted. What we have to get back to is the connection and the human element. And when I talk to businesses now about the digital transformation, as it's being called, and modernizing businesses using technology, the piece that is missing is the human element. What does it mean for, you know, what would it look like for passengers, for customers, for suppliers, for your whole network? What does it actually look like for them? And that's the bit I think we really have to get down into.
I talked to a company about more or less the human element, and we came to talk about art. So what differentiate art made by an AI and a machine versus art made by a human being?
Yeah.
The difference is the human error. Is that when a person does art, there's lots of errors into it because you just wing it, right? You go ahead, while the machine is kind of like a summary of a lot of assumptions. So what differentiates human art versus machine art is that there's a human error into it. And when you transfer that analogy to programming, is that parts of what we have to do is that we have to allow errors, human errors inside machine learning. And that's going to be difficult. And it to your point is that we're going to integrate people more into technology. That's even more.
Yeah. But I guess the issue of a human error versus a machine, machines and, you know, what can come out is almost perfect. What human, too perfect. What humans like is the imperfections. You know, it's why things are scarce. The scarcity of things is what gives us the attraction. So, you know, we were talking about cars earlier. You know, to go out and buy a car that you know you can get easily isn't as aspirational as something that you aspire to. And one of the things that we like to aspire to is things that are handmade. Anything that's handmade and someone's put an effort in. A human that's made a painting, someone who's physically stitched a garment. That's what gives us the value. When you have factory produced goods, it lessens the value. So I think it's more important that we add the human you know, imperfections into what we do.
And maybe that's the answer to the question, which is that to make the AI successful, you have to integrate a human element.
Yes.
You have to integrate humans more than people think. So I mean, whenever I talk to people about AI, it's always like, oh, it's going to take everything over, and it's going to. Yeah, that's not true.
No, absolutely not.
It's not true because the human element is as important, or maybe even more important than it was 20 years ago in terms of us being integrated into technology.
Yeah, I mean, what the AI will give us is quicker answers, but what it won't give us is the sentiment around the decision making that's being made, because you can have two answers which are both look perfect, but which route you choose is dependent on the context that you want to apply to it.
Yeah.
And that's the human element that needs to be applied. So this shouldn't just be about putting technology in, doing, you know, letting AI take over all people's jobs. Of course it'll take over some jobs the same way machines took over manual work. You don't want to do repetitive work. You want to add value by having the insights that you get as a human being when you have information in front of you and you can make a decision based on it.
Yeah, and we're not lost because we still need it in this transaction. But what we have to do is we just have to move faster.
Yeah, we have to move faster. And again, when I talk to businesses about digital transformation, that element is often lost. We try to do transformation in organizations at the pace of change that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, when now you have to move quickly, iterate quickly, and also test and learn as you go, and not be afraid to make mistakes. Not be afraid to fail. And it's in the failure that you get a lot of the insights.
Exactly. That's where you learn.
That's where you learn.
Yeah.
That's where you learn.
Do you mind defining digital transformation? What does that mean for companies out there? It's a big question.
It is. Well, it isn't actually that big a question. You think about when computers first came into the workplace, that was digital transformation. And we've been doing digital transformation ever since. So it isn't new. I think the problem that a lot of organizations have is they try to define it. They try to have a definition of what it actually means, when in reality, all it is you're modernizing your business using technology. That's it. So whether it is you're putting in a new ERP solution, which happened, decades ago, that's when they first came in, or you're putting in mobile solutions, which again happened decades ago. That isn't new. These things have already existed, but you've currently got operations that are legacy, and there is new technology coming out. So how do you now modernize what you currently do, how you sell using technology? And it means that you have to reinvent yourself. This isn't about doing the same thing, just with a different color. This is about doing something completely different, almost tearing up the rule book and going forward with bravery and actually implementing something that's completely different.
The two things I hear most often for CIOs is, one, we can't prove ROI, and two, we don't know where to start. Yeah. That's especially a fact about AI, is that, our CEO or board of directors told us to start to do AI, and we don't know where to start with this. But isn't that just back to, you look at your workplace and business transformation or optimization, and then you try to figure out a few of those on where you can integrate new technology and make it better or make it simpler. Or
it's the funny thing for me around this problem, because I hear it all the time, and I faced into the same problem. You get into almost a mindset of, how do I prove ROI? How do I get the funding, the capex, to be able to do this initiative when the models just don't work? I guess the problem really for organizations is to rethink how you do these types of changes. And the way I do it is through the concepts of architecture. If I'm building a new house or renovating an existing one, you have to have an architectural drawing over what is your as-is.
That's my number one recommendation to everybody.
What is your as-is? Where are you actually starting from? And the architecture for me is enterprise architecture, which includes the business architecture, the capabilities of the business. How are we currently constructed? Because it's no good having a strategy to say, this is our vision, this is what we want to do, and you've no idea where you're starting from, because you can do what you want to do through 100 different ways. So really understanding what's the business architecture and how are we currently constructed. I then overlay it with application architecture. So for each of those business capabilities, what systems and applications sit on those capabilities. And often when I get to that point, my business peers are quite surprised to see how many applications they have doing more or less the same thing. You then overlay the data on top of that, and you realize you've got data all over the place. Data is being collected and generated. You don't have systems of record. You have systems everywhere that are collecting the same types of data. But even worse, they're manipulating that data so it looks different to where it should have been generated from. So you need to really understand those points. And then the final point is around the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure, architecture. Where are all these systems sitting? How are they integrated? Once you get that full picture, you've then got your aha moment of, okay, so if this is where we're starting, what do we want to do in the future? So in the next 5 years, where do we want to be? You then redesign your business architecture to say, okay, we're going to sell in different markets, we're going to sell different products and services, this is what it's going to look like. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have to restructure our operating model to be able to do it. You then overlay the applications for the new architecture, the data, the integration. You start to take things away, and then you build your transition plan.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. There is no other easier way of doing it other than that. And to get the ROI that my peers, CIOs, are looking to be able to achieve, have that picture, because then you have a common conversation with your peers and with your execs to be able to debate. If we don't do this, then you're never going to get that. And this is why.
It almost sounds like archaeology and excavating.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's going back to basics.
That was invented in the 1980s, exactly. And now you have to kind of like dig them out and figure out why it was done the way it was done.
Yeah. Sometimes that is as important, but what's more important is knowing where you're moving from and knowing all the bits that have to be moved. And sometimes it might be better to, I was talking to a business in Dubai, and they are looking at building a completely new business from scratch because it's easier than dismantling the existing building.
It is many times.
Yeah, but when you've got the money to do it, it becomes easier. But the thinking has to be, do we absolutely need to transform this, or can we build in parallel and then migrate?
Has IT become easier?
I think IT has become more understood in the workplace. When I look at boards, the makeup of boards, the CIO role is the most fragmented across the C-suite, because you've got Chief Digital Officer, Chief Data Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Information and Data Officer. I mean, it's just so vast. So you're never really having a single voice around the table when it comes to technology. You're not the only one that owns the technology. The simplicity of it now is that we have so many business technologists. So I expect my colleagues in finance and in marketing and in HR and in sales and in operations to have at least a same base level of knowledge around what technology can do as I do, and to have conversations where their colleagues in their functions are learning the technology as much. So yes, it's becoming easier, but with that comes more challenges, because you've got to co-create, you've got to work together. You
almost become that person that kind of sits and orchestrates all of the functions.
Absolutely.
Because I feel that's what we do as a company, is that we kind of try to do exactly what you're saying. We're trying to pull in as many functions as possible, because it's not an IT decision.
It's not, no.
It's never an IT decision.
No, and it's not the privileged few that make these decisions now. It is quite a few people. But the way CIOs now need to work is to much more become a business person, to really understand the business they're working in to such a deep level. And it's easier for CIOs because they work across the whole of the organisation. There's no longer the silos. But the key is building the guardrails and the controls, the necessary controls that need to be in place around cybersecurity and data governance, and build the platforms that will then enable the business colleagues to work in an easier way. And that's the secret, really, for CIOs moving forward.
I was with my boss in our yearly kickoff in Paris a couple of weeks ago, and we were on stage, and when we tested, we had a script in front of us. And then the first test didn't go very well, and he basically said to everybody, well, just ditch the script, because if you're not capable of talking to your business, you're in the wrong position.
Yeah.
The point of all of that is that you need to feel confident. I think getting back to the ROI is that if you're capable of explaining what it is that you're doing, the journey to getting your ROI approved, and it's easier.
It is
but
much easier.
you can't just push the technology in front of you saying that's it, because it's not.
No.
It's the bigger thing for the company.
It is the bigger thing for the company, and it's also the company understanding the why. Why is this so important?
Yeah.
Why do we have to build, 6 feet of foundations before we can see any value coming out of the ground? That's the value. So having that architectural map actually gives you a common language to have the conversation.
I mean, maybe that's one of the problems, is that everybody is expecting short-term gains, while it's not. It's not about that.
No.
It's about building the foundation for when you built kind of like train routes across the Western sphere, like to kind of connect towns and people.
Yes.
It's the same thing we're doing here, and that takes time.
It does take time, and you've got to understand the journey, because if you were starting on the journey with no map and no understanding of, what was being built, you had no idea what it was going to look like. This new house you were going to live in, you just literally left in the olden days of IT. IT, I described them as being in the basement. No one ever went there. Things were almost thrown into the basement.
That has changed.
That's definitely changed. But now that the CIO role is now in the boardroom, the key aspect is really getting your peers to understand how to actually construct the capabilities of technology. And I always use the architecture, because everyone understands the concept of architecture. You're building something, you're building a new business, you're building a new service. You have to architect that and design it and understand the journey in it, because as we know with technology now, things change at the rate of knots. So if something's going to change, what then has to change on the strategy? How do you actually build the agility into it to enable it to change?
I've never thought it in this way, but actually when I go back and think about our CFOs in our companies, that their understanding of the business has moved from an Excel sheet to now they're actually an integrated part of the business discussion.
Yes.
They understand almost as much as the business that I do as a general manager.
Yeah. And the CFO role is almost equivalent to the COO role. They really have to understand how the business is operated. Those two roles, I think, are really key. And the CIO role needs to mirror that, because between the three functions, the CFO, the COO, and the CIO, that's how you enable the business to be able to do whatever the strategy, the vision, the purpose of the company.
So you're in the boardroom. I just want to go back to where you started, and you and I started, was that you go into the boardroom with a screwdriver and then saying, here's the business, start to kind of open it up, look into it. You need to understand that before we can get to the business discussion, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then kind of like to your dinner conversation with your dad.
Yeah.
Kind of the experiences of
Yeah.
What did you learn?
What did you learn that, today that you didn't know when you went to bed last night?
Well, my favorite is always to kind of point at a business function and asking, the legacy one is asking, saying, why are we doing it that way?
Yeah.
Why is it there?
Yeah.
And then I know it's not always a pleasant discussion.
No.
But that's where you get to next step, and you kind of put that in, you Lego it into the IT transformation or digital transformation that you're doing.
Yeah. It's worth having that conversation with businesses that have a huge amount of legacy, people who have worked there for a very long time, because they have their concepts and they have their frameworks of how things are done. And when you come in with why the hell would we do it like that? Well, we've always done it and it works. So don't.
But that's actually, it's very interesting. That's actually the exact point for why you die.
Yes.
Because if you don't reinvent yourself.
Exactly.
So that's the danger of every business.
Yeah.
And you have this 20, 30-year-old cycle.
Yes.
That's where after 30 years, the big legacy companies die out and disappear.
Absolutely.
Kodak or
Woolworth, and
lots
there's lots in the graveyard, and Blockbuster are a great example. When Netflix first came onto the market,
they didn't see it coming.
They didn't see it coming, and they had the conversation with Netflix in the very early days and thought, well, there's no business model there, and left it. But that is repeating itself time and time again at a much faster rate today. And I think businesses need to really think through the purpose of the business and how the business is currently architected, and have people in who really understand business architecture and how to build out a new...
Or come with a different angle to where you normally are, which is the great thing about the next generation of people that are coming up now. That they have this different view of technology, which brings the right perspective to do the transformation that you need to do.
But in order to get those people in, we have to enable them to do their best work.
You have to chance it.
Exactly.
To get them in and saying we need something new. And then you embrace that.
And embracing it means enabling them to do their best work.
Which takes me to the last point, which we talked about before we started this, which is sense of gravity for where things are happening. And you mentioned Dubai yourself. That region. So everything about Riyadh and Saudi and Dubai and Abu Dhabi and that region is just power force.
They are a power force. And culturally, they have a philosophy around game changing. They want to ensure the best of the best. To build Dubai in the last 30, 40 years as Dubai has been built up out of a desert, and to see it today is just phenomenal. I know it's a bit of a Marmite region for a lot of people. Some people like it, some people hate it. But just looking at the lessons that, looking at a city a state being built out of nothing in a relatively short period of time. They're now building the biggest airport in the world, which is being built.
The digital city,
all around, really harnessing the capabilities of technology, but for the power of good.
It's very interesting if you look at the physics of the digital city. You look about how it's going to be constructed. They're constructing something right now which physically can't be built. But they're building it anyhow. They're excavating the desert and starting to kind of build this vision for something that's going to happen maybe 20 years from now.
Exactly. Well, you think about people who have had innovation. And if I go back to, I'm thinking of Tesco Club card, when that was first introduced, they had no idea what all the data was going to be used for, or how it was going to be used. But that was game changing. Just knowing that they could collect it, they did, thinking there is going to be some use of this going forward. You extrapolate that from any business now looking to do something. You've got to really think outside of the current norms of we know what we know today, because we know that AI is practically doubling every 3.3 months in capability. Every 3.3 months. So can you imagine in a year's time what the capability... No, exactly. We can't. So not knowing what the future is going to look like for technology, we have to build with agility in mind to be able to adopt new things as they come along. And that's what this new city, digital city, is going to be all about. Knowing that there's going to be capability at some point in the future that's going to be able to harness this. And that's exciting. I love things like that.
It's all in the head.
Yes,
It's all coming back to our capability as human beings.
Right.
With that was it. Thank you very much for coming. It was amazing. We could have talked for hours.
I could have talked.
It was so nice of you to come here on a sunny day in London. And with that was another podcast. I hope you liked it. Please remember to subscribe, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Lenovo.